Hey, it's Leah with Darwin Textiles, and today I'm so excited to be talking to you about your fear of failure, or maybe your fear of having fit issues if you're sewing a garment specifically. If you're someone who's bought sewing patterns, you've bought the tools, supplies, some really pretty fabric, but you can't seem to quite jump in and actually get started, or every project feels so scary, then this video is going to be perfect for you. It's part 3 of my Sewing Roadblock series. In video 1, we talked about how you can get more time and energy to sew. And part 2 was about overcoming indecision and overwhelm and how to make quick decisions in the process. Now we're here for part 3, fear of failure and fear of fit issues. When I surveyed my subscribers, this was the number 2 biggest roadblock they face when getting started with any kind of sewing project. So it's definitely worthy, and it's definitely something I have a lot of experience with too. I have basically sewn my entire dream linen wardrobe for myself. And I've also been running, I know this might not be relatable to a lot of you, but I've been running a handmade clothing business that's all custom sized. So not only have I had to kind of overcome the fear of something fitting myself, I have also gone through years of being terrified if my garments are going to fit someone else. And then I started creating sewing patterns for other people to use. And I'm then terrified that they're gonna fit those hundreds of people making them themselves. So this is a totally familiar feeling for me, but I've gotta say that overcoming it has been absolutely instrumental to my success of being able to build the wardrobe that I want. You have to be able to push through that fear of failure. And I've got so many tactics and mindset shifts for you today that I think are going to help us do just that. So together we're going to be normalizing and embracing failure. Then I'm going to jump into some practical, tactical tips on how you can really empower yourself to get a better fit on your clothing. I bet this video is going to be extra relevant to people who are maybe still new to sewing, or they've taken a break from sewing. They haven't come back to it in a long time, so they're kind of out of practice. It's also going to be really useful for those of you who maybe have someone or something in your life that's constantly telling you that you aren't good enough or that the things you make aren't perfect. I know that I've experienced those voices in my life, and they can be really, really hard to push past. That little whisper in your head, maybe it's someone else's whisper that is telling you that you're gonna screw it up, or every time you make something, there's something just not quite right about it. I just finished reading the book Brave Not Perfect by Reshma Saujani, and it was such a good reminder and eye-opener that our society, especially the United States, really conditions girls as they're growing up to be perfect, to be these perfect specimens and do everything so perfectly, and they're constantly rewarded every time they do something perfectly. Whereas boys are conditioned a lot more to be brave. All right, so they're much more rewarded for risk taking, and not so much emphasis on how perfectly they do anything. And so much of this is societal conditioning. It has nothing to do with our inner biologies. It's just the culture that we live in and that we keep perpetuating over time. And I feel like it's such a strong reason why a lot of us women experience anxiety around starting something new, trying something that we may not be perfect at, applying for jobs that we don't meet 100% of the qualifications for. Oftentimes, we tell ourselves and each other that if we're not going to be perfect at it, then why do it at all? And I think that causes us to miss out on a lot of really fun, interesting experiences in life if we live that way. So whether it's one person's voice in your life or all of society, I want to help you unlearn these voices and these behaviors. I want to be the little voice in your ear that says, you can do it. It's going to be a lot of fun. It is worth the risk. And failure is 100% a part of that process. It's worth embracing failure because the outcome is so great. I'm about to share my top recommendations for facing your fear of failure, But before that, I want you to know that you can get a free, don't even have to put in your email address, a totally free workbook over at my website at charliedarwintextiles.com/unstuck. I made this just as a sort of toolkit for you to use. You can edit it, you can print it out, fill it out. There's journal prompts, a lot of thoughtful reminders in there so that you can actually take action on overcoming these roadblocks that you're facing that are getting in your way of getting started. So go check that out using the link in the description below. And if any of the videos in this 3-part series have gotten you excited to start sewing again, I have a great recommendation for a beginner through advanced friendly sewing pattern. It's my new OLENE pants sewing pattern. They're so fun to sew up, and I've got all sorts of resources for you to make it a really smooth sailing sewing process. I have illustrated instructions. You can order it from me as a print, a PDF, or a full-blown sewing kit with all the fabric and notions you need. And I also offer a sew-along video tutorial so that you can see me actually in motion putting this pattern together. You can find the link to that pattern in my description as well. Here's what we're gonna do. We're going to normalize the fact that failure happens, and then I'm actually gonna talk you into embracing failure and even looking forward to failure in your projects, believe it or not. And then I'm going to share my most practical tips for sizing and fit so that you can leave this feeling really empowered and confident in getting the right fit on your next sewing project. To start us off, we are jumping first into normalizing the process. My mom always told me growing up, and I think it's really stuck with me, and it has been very helpful. She always reminded me that the first one you make is always the worst. And it's so true. It's true to this day. I've sewn hundreds of garments, and when I start on a new design, even if I'm using a pattern, the first copy I make of it is absolutely the worst. So the more times you sew it, it's just gonna get better and better every single time. Plan for that, expect that. Plan to make another version of that garment, because going into your project with that in mind puts you at ease knowing, well, I gotta do it this first time to get all the mistakes out of the way. Then I can move on to the second time. I'll still make a couple mistakes second time, but nowhere near what's gonna happen on this first one. And what I honestly recommend, if this is a real struggle for you, the fear of failure, is to plan for it and start intentionally ugly. I have this video I posted a while back called Start Ugly, and I show off all of the very first garments I ever made. Like I was like 13 and 14 years old when I made these, to be fair, but they are so ridiculous. Like, they're not just bad and poorly sewn. They were the first times I was ever like using a sewing machine and trying to do sewing patterns and stuff. I'm a big proponent of approaching any sort of new skill or something you're getting back into with a big sense of humor, being silly about it. Make something that you intentionally want to be ugly, because all you're doing is you're just warming up your skill set, reminding yourself or learning how to use the sewing machine. It's totally fine and normal for it to come out ugly. You can even aim for that. Now, my next reassurance for you is that we all freaking seam rip. It's so annoying. It's so annoying that we do it. But I swear every single one of us, doesn't matter if you're a beginner or advanced sewist, we all have to seam rip some stuff sometimes. And I will say that seam ripping does get fewer and further between after so many garments. So like, I don't seam rip nearly as often as I used to have to. I make mistakes less frequently because honestly, for my business and my own wardrobe, I'm making the same garments over and over again. So, but what I can tell you is that even though you will have fewer boofs in the future, you will still need to use your seam ripper, and that's normal. That's fine. We just need to embrace that and accept that it's part of the process. The next thing I want to normalize is that waste is totally normal. I have still to this day, after 5 years of sewing very consistently, I still every once in a while cut things out in the wrong size. Like too small too. Like you can't even make it smaller or big. You can't, it's the wrong size. I have wasted the fabric. I, of course, can use that fabric for scraps. There's tons of ways I can upcycle that fabric, but I've done that. I have wasted time having to remake something. I have broken 3 sewing machine needles in one sitting. Waste is part of the process, and I think it's any creative work. Painting, you waste paint. When you're doing paper crafting, you waste paper. There are you going to make samples that are unwearable when you sew, and that's okay. Next, I want to jump into mindset a little bit and how we can embrace failure and actually look forward to it. The first point I want to make is that the feeling of accomplishment, of feeling like, oh my God, I did it, like that pure pride and joy that lights you up, it's only really gonna happen, and it's extra strong when failure was a real option. Now, I heard this on a podcast from a girl who heard it from someone else, so I'm sorry if I'm quoting someone who said this more officially, but that feeling of accomplishment truly is more present and strong when failure is a real option, when you could have screwed up along the way. If you're doing something that you know is absolutely going to go the same way every single time, it's always going to go right. It's more those tasks like running a marathon you didn't think you could finish, cooking a new recipe that you've never made before, writing your first book. It could be giving a speech at someone's wedding, or it could be sewing a garment that might not turn out right, that might not fit you when you're done with all of the hard work. The potential for there to be failure is a key ingredient in how good you're going to feel if you get it right. The next thing I want to recommend is that you practice having more fluid creativity. And what I mean by this is that allow yourself to look forward to happy accidents. This is very like Bob Ross. He talked about happy accidents a lot when he painted. But happy accidents sometimes make our best work. These are things that you could consider to be a mistake, or basically just something that didn't go the way that you originally planned. And it can actually change the shape and the trajectory of our project for the better. It might cause us to problem solve in a way that's like, for instance, you accidentally put your buttonhole in the wrong spot and you're like, oh crap. And when you seam rip it out, it leaves kind of an ugly spot. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to add an interesting panel of fabric over that area, over that booth, or a patch, or to add belt loops in that area. I want to give you permission to know that like the final product of whatever you end up creating, it does not need to look like how you imagined it from the start. Let go of that. Have inspiration. Make decisions at the beginning that guide you and steer you in the direction you want to go. But then let them go little by little as you move through. It does not need to look like how you imagined it from the start. And honestly, it's really fun if it doesn't. Something I love thinking about is that every creative project is an experiment and an opportunity to learn. Things are going to change as you're working through it. And what I love is this quote from Rick Rubin in the book, The Creative Act, which I totally recommend this book for you. He says, "How can we offer the art what it needs without blind trust? We are required to believe in something that doesn't exist in order to allow it to come into being." So I think of this a lot with painting too. You have this blank canvas. You are basically bringing something into being, putting paint on a canvas. When you're sewing, you're turning you're turning just floppy fabric into a 3D object that is going to encase the complexities of a human body. That is insane and amazing, and it require you to just believe in something that doesn't exist and have blind trust that you will get there through the process. All right, and the last piece of our mindset here that I want to talk about is who sees your work. I want you to be intentional about who you show your work to. On the one hand, you might really get a lot out of showing it off. Okay, so showing people, I think especially in real life, that you are making clothes, it will blow people's mind. I know like on YouTube, you can get yourself in a rabbit hole thinking everyone sews clothes, but like they don't. Newsflash. Almost everyone I know does not sew their own clothes. And people are blown away when you tell them that you sewed something. Even if you did it in your mind kind of crappy, they won't even see your perceived imperfections or issues with it. They're just gonna be like, holy crap. Like, sewing is a crazy thing in this day and age to hand make your clothing. So on the other hand, I also want you to consider if it's better for you to just make it just for you. This process can be just for your experience and not for the entire internet's commentary. So like, you don't have to post what you make on Instagram. No one has to see it except you. Success doesn't have to mean that you have this wearable finished garment. That's just one version and one facet of success in this process. So don't forget, takeaway, that just because the garment fits or doesn't fit doesn't indicate the success of the project. That being said, we're all worried. What if it doesn't fit? What if I look like a freaking potato in this thing that I made and I'm pissed about it? All right, so let's start off with discussing the elephant in the room. Okay, 13 sizes. I put out this new sewing pattern, and I'm sharing this mostly from the perspective of being a clothing designer and sewing pattern designer. I sell my sewing patterns over on my website. Okay, hundreds of people, thousands of people at this point have bought my patterns. The newest pattern I put out, it has 13 sizes. I expanded my size range a little bit. It has 13 sizes for these pants. And I'll tell you right now, even as the person trying to sell this pattern to you, that 13 sizes do not perfectly fit the people of all 13 sizes. I know that sounds a little scary, but it's just the truth. We all come in different body heights and geometry. So as is, my pattern is not a one and done for if you're size 7, it fits you. Because you are a different body height than the height the pattern is made for. And we're going to talk about how to adjust for that in just a second. And you're also probably a different geometry. So people have, sometimes really big chests versus flat chests versus larger backs, broad shoulders, narrow shoulders, wide hips, big booty, flat butt. Even within one size range, you can have bodies that look very different. And a sewing pattern is created based on sort of a general fit model and graded out from a specific fit model, so that we can generally tell, does this pattern fit well on every single size as far as like the actual circumference of everything going around the body. But most of us are not the same body as the fit model. So that's where it becomes time to tailor your clothes to your exact needs. And please do not be intimidated by the word tailor. This is not like you have to go in and be a professional tailor or have a fashion degree from some special school or any school at all. You just kind of need a computer with Google and you can figure it out. Tailoring your clothes to fit your exact body dimensions is a little bit more important, I would say, on a garment that's going to be very tightly fitted to your body. Most Charlie Darwin garments are pretty loose fitting, free flowing. They don't require a lot of tailoring. And I do that intentionally because I am also not that into really specific high detail tailoring. I want something, because I'm making clothing for lots of different bodied customers and sewing patterns, I want to make sure that I'm setting us all up for success as much as possible. And I try and make clothes that are cute and shapely on the body, but not tight fitting because I'm not a huge fan of the complexity of really intense tailoring. But do know that adjusting a sewing pattern for your body is totally normal, totally expected. And please do not blame your body. Please, please, please. There is no one to blame. You're not to blame. Your body is not to blame. I'm not to blame because I'm trying to create a design that can be used and morphed for all sorts of different body shapes. So I'll re-emphasize here, the sewing pattern is just the starting point. I think a good sewing pattern will get you about 80 to 90% of the way there to like a good fit. I think the other, let's say 10%, is up to you bringing your unique body dimensions, your preferences, and your creativity to it. I sort of think of a sewing pattern as being like a recipe. If I'm making a recipe, I pick one out that looks good, but it's like not 100% of the way there. I will follow that recipe, and I know that it'll get me like 80 or 90% of the way to a good meal, but it's up to me to determine ultimately how much salt am I putting in. That's a healthy way, I think, to approach a sewing pattern. Success doesn't just mean that you made a replica of the model photos. The garment might look a bit different on you than it looked on the people in the photos. What really matters is that it feels good and it looks good. I want to recap real quick from video number 2. We spoke about making decisions and how fit is actually something you have to make a decision about. And we talked in part 2 about setting some North Stars to guide the decisions that you make. Here are the key basic things that you're going to start off with fit. You want to measure the body parts that matter the most for that pattern. So most sewing patterns, you need to measure your waist, your hips for pants, and your bust if it's a shirt or a dress. The pattern will tell you which things you need to measure. What's most important here is that you're actually measuring yourself correctly. So I have a video on my channel. It's a little goofy. It's an early one that I made. It's got kind of weird audio, but I show you really clearly how to correctly measure your waist, your hips, and your bust. You might be surprised. I've worked in person with people. I show them where to measure your waist and they're totally shocked on where to do these measurements. So check out that video. If you tend to have sizing issues, it might be because you're taking your measurements in the wrong spots. But once you've got these measurements, you're going to use these to look at the size chart on the pattern. In case you haven't figured this out yet, garments that are in a store as well as sewing pattern garments, there is no universal size chart. Some size charts from different brands and pattern makers, they might be very similar, but there is no universal standard for this. 2 more things that you're going to take into account are things like the rise and the length, let's say, of a pair of pants, the level of ease that you want in the garment. So let's start with ease. Ease is the amount of bagginess or roominess in a garment. So I've shown this in past videos, but basically this sleeve right here, it has this much ease that I'm pinching out. So you can see like where my arm is and all of this extra room down here. That is the ease. And you also have ease like on your body circumference. So if I pull this tight, you can see there's all this extra fabric on the sides. Now this is particularly important based on what fabric you're using. So something like linen that doesn't have almost any stretch to it, you're going to want to make sure you build in a little bit more ease, especially in places where you're going to be bending, like your joints. Okay, and you'll know how much ease there'll be in specific parts of the garment based on something called the finished garment measurements chart. Most sewing patterns have this, and this is where the pattern maker tells you exactly what the circumference is of the finished garment at each touch point. So they might say at your bicep or the wrist hem or the chest circumference. And this helps you be able to see, okay, if I have a 40-inch bust circumference, which makes me, let's say, size 8, but I look at the garment measurement chart and size 8 says there's 41 inches in the finished garment all the way around. Then I think, okay, that gives me 1 inch of like extra space in this area all the way around. That's a pretty tight fitting garment. That's not a ton of ease, but maybe that's what you're looking for. You're looking for something a little bit more slim. But let's say you want something that's a bit roomier. So you might actually from this decide to move up to a size 9. Even though your body measurement said size 8, you might move up to a size 9 because you want there to be a little bit more space. You want there to be a little bit more wiggle room for your body inside the clothes. And if you're not sure how much ease you like, it's hard to visualize, look at some clothes you already own that you like the fit of. Measure them at those touch points and compare it to the finished garment measurements chart. Now, the last thing I want to mention here is things like the rise and the length of something like a pant. These are things that we'll get into height adjustments in a minute, but overall, you might have sort of a preference for what kind of rise or length that you want. Do you like high-rise pants that go, up past your belly button, or are you a low-rise kind of girl? If you leave with any bit of information from this video, I want it to be that height matters. It really matters. It does not matter when you're dating someone necessarily, or maybe it does for you. I don't know. I love a good short guy, but height does truly matter in clothing. And as I spoke about previously, all sizes of a sewing pattern are made for one body height. All right, the length that they add, let's say you're looking at the sewing pattern and you see that size 10 is much longer than size 3. That's not because they're accommodating for a taller person. That's because size 10 has to go around more circumference of booty than size 3 did, and so it's accommodating for that. So for me, Charlie Darwin Textiles, I have set my body height for all of my patterns as being 64 inches. I chose that just because it's like the average female body height in the United States, so I thought it's got to be the closest to matching the most people possible. This is so simple. I've made it so simple for you. I was really intimidated by this when I started my clothing business, and as someone who's really short, I'm only 5'1" tall, I know the importance of making height adjustments to the fit. It really changes the way a garment looks on you proportionally. Getting the height right is so important, and even small differences like a ½ inch can make a difference, okay? So I'm gonna make it super easy on you. Go over to my website at charliedarwintextiles.com/calculator. This is where my height adjustment calculator lives. All you have to do is put in your pattern's like ideal body height. So like how Charlie Darwin's is 64 inches. If you're using someone else's pattern, you can still use my calculator. You just need to know what height they're starting at. You got your pattern's ideal body height, then you're gonna put in your total body height. I've got inches and centimeters, and then press enter, and like magic, this calculator is gonna show you exactly how much to lengthen or shorten your sewing pattern. And the key here is that when you lengthen or shorten, you're not going to change the hem width of the pattern. And I'm not going to go extremely in depth into this right here, right now, because I have an entire other video about how to do this and how to make these adjustments. It's much simpler than you'd think. Check out my height adjustment calculator in that video if you haven't yet. The height adjustment calculator is going to take you from that baseline 80 to 90% good fit area to 99% good fit. My next huge practical tip for making a garment fit better is remembering what I said at the start of this video. The first one is always the worst. Make a sample garment to start. So this is so easy. You just make a practice garment with a thrifted bed sheet. They cost like $1 to $7 from a thrift store, or maybe you have an old one in your closet that's like all gross and has poop stains on it. Who cares? Wash it, use it. It doesn't even matter if it's a cute fabric. It could be the ugliest fabric. It could have holes in it. But also you can thrift really cute bed sheets, honestly, from the store and make something kind of wearable. So that's an option too, but I'm just saying a thrifted bed sheet takes all the pressure off of that first go of it being good. And again, if you're like sad about waste, I think this is a perfect option. People have already rejected this bed sheet. It's already gone to Goodwill. And when you're making this sample garment, it's so simple. You just need to do the basics. Now you can make the whole thing start to finish with it. All of the details if you really want to like practice every single step along the way. But ultimately, you can really just do the basics. You don't need to make any pockets, do any seam finishes like serging or zigzag stitch or anything like that. You're just trying to get the basic skeleton. What you do need to do is make sure you use the correct seam allowance that the pattern instructs, because that's going to make sure you're getting the right fit. And then from there, you've done your height adjustments, you've made a sample garment, then you can start to fine tune. And this comes into play probably more often for things like pants. If you feel like the crotch is doing something kind of weird, sometimes it is on a bodice, like maybe the pattern is made for someone with really big boobs and you've got none. Maybe it's for someone with no boobs. These kinds of things are going to come up, and you can totally fine tune even further to fit your dimensions. That is too big of a topic for today's video, but there are so many easy, simple to follow resources out there. Just Google common pants, if you're working on pants, common pants fit adjustments, and you'll find a lot of resources. I'm still pretty new to my career, so I haven't built up a whole resource bank for you, but I trust people like Melly Sews and Seamwork. These are the places I also go to learn about fit adjustments. They're all there. They're free online. There are also YouTube videos where you can see people making adjustments. My only recommendation here is don't overdo it. Don't overfit. Remember, we're not chasing perfection here. We're actually leaving perfectionist tendencies behind. Sometimes when you're chasing that last 1% of perfection, it can get ugly. I've done this before on clothing, and I've done this on painting as well. You think you're pretty close to being done with the painting. You're looking at it and you're like, oh, what if I just added that thing? It would just make it look a little bit better. And you've taken it too far and you can't undo it. You know what I mean? You can always remake, and with clothes you can always remake. It's totally fine. We're embracing that. But sometimes taking it one step too far can set you back 10 steps into needing to redo something. So once you're in that 90 to 95% fits pretty well range, I usually recommend leave it. Don't overcorrect for something just in the striving for that 100% perfection. All right, now I'm very curious. I would love to know in the comments, what kind of scary projects have you been working on lately? What has made you a little nervous to start, but you jumped in anyway? What are you doing that's a little bit scary, or what do you want to start doing? What do you want to jump into? The tips I have here today are ones that have just worked for me over time. I'd love to hear from you. How have you overcome the fear of failure on some of your projects, or the fear of something not fitting right? Please, please, please share with us down in the comments. We would love to hear from you. All right, remember that you have the Unstuck Maker's Toolkit. That is the workbook that I provide over on my website, so you can follow along with this series and put all of these tips into action for yourself. All right, let's recap how we're going to face the fear of failure moving forward. Number one, remember what my mom always said? The first one is always going to be the worst. Number two, we all seam rip. Freaking sucks. It's so annoying. The seam ripping is totally normal, a part of the process. Waste is also very normal. Number four, accomplishments need failure to feel good. Number five, I recommend that you practice fluid creativity, where the process unfolds as you go through creating a garment. Number six, failure is always an opportunity to learn something about yourself, about what you like, about your tools, and about garment making. Number seven, compare your best case scenario to your worst case scenario. Which one weighs more to you? That'll help you decide if maybe you should or should not move forward with this project. Number eight, be aware of who you share your creations with. Know whose support is going to fuel you and whose is going to feel empty or critical. Number nine, when it comes to fit, please do not blame your body. It is not your body's fault that something doesn't fit. It is just a process to get two-dimensional fabric to form over three-dimensional body. It is not your body's fault that the pattern doesn't fit perfectly to it right off the bat. What you want to do is number 10, consider patterns as recipes to get you started. You're going to need to make some adjustments along the way so that it really fits your taste and your needs and your form. To do this, you want to look at the size chart and the finished garment measurement chart to determine how much ease you want in the garment. And then you want to make height adjustments. This is so important, specifically for Darwin patterns. If you're not 64 inches tall, then you're going to want to make a height adjustment. I show you exactly how to do that over on my website. You want to make a sample garment first, even if it's just like a quick 30-minute sew through where you just do all the most basic seams. And number 14, you want to fine tune the fit of your garment. It's as easy as a simple Google search. Do not overtune though. Be happy with 90 to 95% good fit. Woo! All right, I sincerely hope that this 3-part video series has helped you carve out some more time and energy in your week, and it has helped you make decisions a little bit more boldly with stronger clarity for what you want. And after today's video, I hope you're feeling much more confident going forward, that failure is a part of the process, but it's about being brave and empowering yourself with the tools to get a better fit. Now, if you're feeling inspired and you've enjoyed spending time with me, I really recommend you check out my sewing patterns over at charliedarwintextiles.com/patterns. My most recent pattern is called the OLENE pants, and you can make these as pants or shorts. And I built this pattern just like all my other ones to feel really low stress and high reward, the kind of project that you might be looking for right now. I build in so many tools to make the process more simple for you, like a video tutorial, illustrated instructions, a sewing terms glossary, a pattern notes worksheet. You can get it as a print, a PDF, or a full-blown sewing kit to save you time shopping for the fabric and notions. I'd say my biggest asset for you is that I love curating a good experience for people. It's one of my love languages, and it's something I think I do well, and I'm so excited to do for you. You should know that the OLENE pants sewing pattern only have a couple days left of early bird pricing on them, and so you should go check them out ASAP if you want to get up to 25% off of this new pattern. So I hope you've enjoyed them as well. If you haven't caught part 1 or part 2, I'll be sure to link them somewhere up here as well. All right, see ya. Bye.